Our starting lineups for St. John's. In the front court, or the backcourt, Booth and Horn will start as usual. Up front, it'll be Kennedy, who's averaging 15 points per game, 20 over his last 5, along with Evans, and the oft-injured Anthony Mason Jr. For UConn, same starting 5 as last game, despite what Calhoun said after that loss to USF. Walker and Dyson in the backcourt, Robinson, Oriaki, and Majuk up front, and Gavin Edwards, their 6th man, was benched as well, did not return to that game against the Bulls. We'll see how many minutes he plays today. Majuk and Walker were benched as well, but Calhoun brought them back in that game, but they could not overcome the Bulls. And it's interesting, UConn has lost 5 consecutive Big East tournament games. Their last win was in 2005 in the quarterfinals against Georgetown.
They struggled with a couple of NIT appearances until last season's run to the Final Four. St. John's late in the year has gone to more of a spread offense, much like West Virginia, 5 out.
Here's Mason, off to a great start for St. John's. Had a hamstring injury earlier this year, a foot problem last year. When healthy, he could score.
One thing you know about St. John's, they're going to hustle, they're going to play hard, they're going to defend. They're very sound defensively.
Mason picking up the foul on Walker out on the perimeter. Jim Calhoun, you talked about him missing 7 games on medical leave. They were 3-4 during that stretch. They were a 12 seed back in the 2007 Big East Championship. Ended up winning the NIT that year. They were a 1 seed, made it to the Final Four last year with 31 wins, a 15-3 league record, but just 7-11 this year. Freshman Stanley Oriaki unable to score inside. And knocked out of bounds by Robinson. 6th year for Norm Roberts as the St. John's head coach. And a lot of people wondering, could this be his final game as the head coach of the Red Storm? Of course, they've been saying that for a couple years. And the school very fond of Roberts, and that's why he stayed on.
They took the program over when they were on under an NCAA investigation. He's a quality guy. His team plays hard. They stay out of trouble. Winning some games would certainly help Norm Roberts' future.
Robinson up high for the jam. How many times have we seen that through the 4 years at UConn for Stanley Robinson?
Stanley Robinson gets more baskets on broken plays and lobs, offensive rebounds, than maybe anybody in the Big East. And a great find by Kemba Walker.
Walker's 2nd in the Big East in assists during the regular season. And a block inside as Robinson hits the deck. Mason on the floor as well. You already see the intensity so far in this game. Both teams recognizing what's at stake. Majuk went for the block. Robinson got a piece of it on the miss by Horn. Here's Walker on the other end. Going to get called for the offensive foul.
You know, Kemba Walker loves to go to the rim, but we saw that early play. Take a look. He gets Robinson in transition. In this last play, you see the finish by Robinson. He can run and jump. Skill level not the highest, but when he is playing hard, he's a very productive player for Jim Calhoun.
Of course, the last time we saw Connecticut in the Big East tournament as Walker may have hurt himself. Working on his right hand there as he goes to the bench. UConn played a 6 overtime game with Syracuse last year. Lost that game, one of the great games in college basketball history, certainly in the history of Madison Square Garden, as a foul is called before the alley-oop.
And a little chicken wing by Anthony Mason Jr. on that back screen.
That's 2 fouls on him already. And Justin Brownlee will come into the game for St. John's. Mason goes to the bench.
One thing St. John's does have, Dave, they have depth. Norm Roberts not afraid to play 10 or 11 players this season. This will be a good matchup. Malik Booth is a very underrated pest defensively.
Inside, Oriaki can't score after the pass by Beverly, but he'll go to the line. 3rd team foul on St. John's already, and first on Sean Evans.
If I'm UConn right now, I push the ball in transition and I try to throw the ball to the lane and pound it down St. John's throat. Let the jump shots come off your inside-out game.
Oriaki averaging 5 points per game. Close to 7 rebounds. McDonald's All-American. Also a Jordan Brand All-American. So he played here at the Garden in that high school All-Star game last April. 75th year, by the way, of college basketball here at MSG, going back to the first game in 1934, which involved NYU and Notre Dame. That was back at the old Garden.
There's no place like this place. Being a New Yorker who grew up here and got a chance when I was a kid to get on the D train from Brooklyn, take it up to 34th and 6th, walk a block, and see some great college basketball here through the years.
Here's Jerome Dyson, but an up and down year for him, and he travels. Dyson averaging just 9 points per game over his last 3 and shooting 30% during that span.
I think that's a big reason why the Huskies have struggled. They've never really been able to get Robinson, Dyson, and Walker on the same page in terms of playing their best all year. Right now, Kemba Walker has been their most consistent player.
And you watch them at Villanova and at West Virginia win those games, and versus Texas, and you think they can beat anybody. As Kennedy hits a 3, St. John's by 4.
I really like this guy. DJ Kennedy is a guy that can rebound, defend, can make some jump shots. They call him big plays.
You talked about him hitting jump shots. He's made 13 of his last 23 now from behind the arc. UConn with just 2 points here in the early going. Beverly got it to Oriaki, blocked by Brownlee. Robinson with a miss, and then a St. John's foul inside, 14 foul. That's going to go on Brownlee, his first.
This is not your typical dominating UConn rebounding team, but their strength right now against St. John's is to take the ball at guys like Sean Evans.
Walker back on the floor. Gavin Edwards making his first appearance. Strip as Dyson lost it to Booth. Got it ahead. Behind the back by Evans. And a push. Travel could have been called on Evans as he didn't have a good handle on it as the ball was pinned up against his back instead of UConn foul, second team foul.
Well, if he bobbles the ball, and that's what Jim Calhoun is asking right now, if he bobbles the ball and doesn't have control of it, he can't travel. That's a good inbounds play.
And Kennedy now with 5 of the 8 points for St. John's.
You're St. John's, on the other hand, knowing that UConn has come off these 3 losses, you try to go at them early and really make this a grinded out game in terms of being physical.
Dyson fouled by Kennedy. 5 team fouls already on St. John's. First on DJ Kennedy. Rough start for UConn. Huskies trying to end a 3-game skid, keep their NCAA tournament hopes, albeit slim hopes, alive.
ESPN's exclusive presentation of college basketball is presented by New York Life, helping keep your family safe and secure. And in part by Dick's Sporting Goods. Every season starts at Dick's. And Infinity, luxury cars that deliver inspired performance.
Back at Madison Square Garden, Connecticut at 12 seed, tying for the lowest seed ever for the Huskies. And that after an 11-3 start. But then 3 consecutive losses. Really was an up and down campaign for the Huskies. Jim Calhoun took a medical leave of absence in January. Missed 7 games. They were 3-4 during that span with associate head coach George Blaney running the team. Calhoun returned February 11th, and first game was on February 13th. They've gone 3-4 since, including 3 straight losses. And we're talking with a Connecticut official prior to the game, as there were some rumors that this may be the final season for Jim Calhoun. His contract is up, and reportedly a deal is on the table. Though it's been unsigned, as there's been a foul called on DJ Kennedy, a second. And the UConn official telling us that he spoke with Jim Calhoun said there's no truth to that rumor whatsoever that this will be his final year.
At this point, you know, if I'm Jim Calhoun and once the season ends, I back up a little bit, take a look and take a stock at where I am. He's 67 years old. He's coached almost 1,200 games, the most active.
Dyson called for the offensive foul. First on him, second offensive foul in Connecticut.
Well, that's a good job right there by St. John's. Dyson and Walker love to get to the lane off the dribble. And you see Booth come over. Gets there just in time, I think, to establish legal guarding position. But one thing you have to do if you play Connecticut, and that's keep Walker and Dyson to keep them out of the paint.
Well, there were some people that thought that Calhoun, after that 07 season when he went 17 and 14, might step aside, but he bounced back, led the team to the Final Four. A lot of people wondering, though, will he have the talent left over and any talent coming in to get UConn back to a position where they can be a national championship contender next year?
I don't think they do. They've got they have one signee and one commitment, and the commitment's Roscoe Smith, a Rudy Gay type player, but they're going to lose some very good seniors. And I honestly, unless they hit the jackpot in the spring signing period, I think they could be right back where they were this year.
Brownlee with a basket on one end, and on the other end a foul called on Evans, his second. Now Jim Calhoun benched his seniors, Dyson, Robinson, and Edwards. The final 16 minutes of that loss to South Florida. Said, quote, I kept pointing to Marquette, who continues to prove that game after game after game, yeah, they have some pretty good players. They're not the 5th best team in the league, but they finish 5th because they play hard every minute. We're going to have to do that in this tournament. If we don't, we're coming home, and I don't want to come home early. That was from the Hartford Courant. And Calhoun ended up starting his normal 5. Edwards getting his normal minutes so far, and he hits the first free throw, 3rd point for UConn.
I saw his team practice back in October, and there are 2 questions I had. Number one, their depth, particularly in the backcourt, and then would this team play hard? I honestly, that day at practice, didn't think it reminded me of the type of teams that I competed against or so many other people competed against. And I think that's been Jim Calhoun's biggest frustration this season.
He was obviously upset with the defense in that South Florida game as the Bulls shot better than 50%. That's the only team all year to shoot better than 50% against Connecticut in a game. And that's the biggest reason, along with, and probably the biggest reason for the lack of effort, as the basket is good by Omari Lawrence, who has not played the last 5 games, but gets to play here in the Big East Championship and gives the Red Storm an 8-point lead.
This is a really good start by St. John's right now. Build a lot of confidence early. And this is what I meant. St. John's is grabbing a UConn team that's been on the ropes for 3 games. So it's important to establish their own tempo.
Brownlee with a block. It'll stay UConn basketball. UConn just 1 field goal so far here in less than 6 minutes. And 4 turnovers.
1 field goal came in transition on that alley-oop to Stanley Robinson via Kemba Walker, who, as I mentioned, is the catalyst for this offense.
Shot clock at 8 as Walker still out near the hash mark. Walker gets into the lane now. Contact, no foul. Don't know if that was a pass or a shot. 1 on the timer. Robinson didn't catch it. Never hit the rim. It's a shot clock violation. As a senior, you got to know that, right?
Absolutely. But credit Malik Booth, because he really hounded Kemba Walker. These are 2 guys that played against each other, came up through the New York City Catholic League system. Of course, Booth from Christ the King High School, which has produced so many really good point guards. You think of Khalid Reeves and Derek Phelps, Eric Barkley, Speedy Claxton. So Kemba Walker, Malik Booth, this is a good battle.
Here's Brownlee spotting up. Off the mark from 3. Good rebound, though, by Burrell. It'll stay St. John's basketball as Dyson returns.
When you talk to coaches around the Big East, Justin Burrell is a guy that you have to be concerned about as much as anybody on that roster. Very talented big guy. Versatile. There he goes.
Oh, way over the rim that time, but couldn't finish on the alley-oop. Lawrence spinning. Edwards may have gotten a piece of that on the way up. Here's Walker on the draw. Got it blocked. Edwards there. Can't put it in. Robinson twists and scores.
That's what Robinson does right there. He makes something out of nothing. That was a frenzied job both ways, rebounding the ball, and Stanley Robinson comes up and puts the ball in.
Still, if you're St. John's, you got to be encouraged that half last year in their Big East tournament game against Marquette, they were down 38-10. They already got 15 points. Three-pointer for Burrell. His first basket. 9-point St. John's lead.
First time I've seen St. John's in person this year, Dave, and watched them a lot on film, but they have a lot of athletic bodies. You know they're solid defensively. It's can they make enough of easy scoring opportunities?
Remember, one of their leading scorers, Dwight Hardy, not playing because of a left knee bone bruise as Edwards gets it to drop. One of the most improved players in the Big East, going from 4 points per game to 11 points per game last year to this year.
See, St. John's goes to 5 out. They're just trying to spread the floor, take advantage of that athleticism that they possess.
Horn coming off the screen. Oh, good pass underneath. Booth didn't want any part of the big guys inside. Burrell short with a jumper. Tapped out, though, by Brownlee. And then Burrell had it taken away by Dyson. Dyson racing down the floor, gets the layup.
That's Connecticut's formula today. Get out in transition with Dyson and Walker.
St. John's comes right back. Lawrence, wild shot, somehow went in over Edwards.
And it looked like he got fouled as well, but nice job of hanging in the air.
Right back down court. Edwards with the dunk. Very close to being in the cylinder off that pass from Dyson. UConn back within 5.
Well, you've seen a little bit of UConn's formula. If they're to win this ball game, it's transition offense. They do not score easily in their half court.
St. John's not having much success from inside the arc as Horn drives and cut that one to go. That almost hit the shot clock.
Talk about a spin move. Willie Mosconi would have liked that bank shot.
7-point lead for St. John's. 9 minutes gone by. Winner of this game plays Marquette tomorrow. Dyson from the corner. Not a great three-point shooter and just 29% on the year. 3-on-2 St. John's. They get a basket from Horn and a UConn foul. Well, our first game, USF and DePaul. Nobody could make a basket. Everything going in so far in this one between St. John's and Connecticut. A lot of wild ones dropping here at the Garden as the Red Storm have an early 9-point lead. Well, there aren't many people that can say they performed at Apollo Theater and at Madison Square Garden, but that is the case with Connecticut sophomore guard Kemba Walker, playing, of course, today, and also as a member of a Bronx dance team, performed at Apollo Theater. Also played at MSG in 2008 in the Jordan Brand All-American high school game.
Always like when those New York kids put hometown Harlem, New York. Very proud of coming from that section of Manhattan. Of course, he went to high school in that neighborhood at Rice High School, 124th Street. He's had some good games at Madison Square Garden as a member of Connecticut.
Recently named All Big East third team as Anthony Mason comes back into the game playing with 2 fouls. St. John's on top by 10. Must-win game for Connecticut. In fact, probably got to win at least a couple. What do you think, Fran, to even get back into conversation for the NCAA tournament? What's necessary for them here as Edwards hits?
Well, I think the big thing for Connecticut is they're going to get a chance to play Marquette next, a team that beat them up at the XL Center at the buzzer. And then they'll play in the quarterfinals a Villanova team they've already beaten. So that's what I mean when I say opportunity games. They have games against teams that could really help their resume. But I think 3 wins at least, maybe get to the, maybe even have to win 4, Dave.
Robinson with a rebound. Dyson on the other end, able to get to the basket. He's got 2 layups. And St. John's wants to call a timeout here. Norm Roberts not happy with the last minute or so as UConn is back within 6 midway through the first half.
What starts out as an innocent family dinner can sometimes get out of hand in a hurry. Unless, of course, you've got AT&T, the nation's fastest 3G network, which means you can surf the web and download videos in a snap. There you go, Dad. Thanks. This is good.
AT&T, a better 3G experience. Get 50% off all messaging phones after mail-in rebate like the Pantech Reveal, only from AT&T.
Connecticut has had three-game losing streaks this year and finished 7-11 in league play. They've got a great strength of schedule because of who they played out of conference. And losses at Michigan, at Providence, 2-5 against the RPI top 50. So Lombardi's latest bracketology has them out.
You add wins against Georgetown, Marquette, Villanova, and then possibly Syracuse. That would be 3 more really quality wins, pump them up to 5 top 50 wins, and that would do it.
They're the 12th seed and the lowest seed ever to win the Big East tournament, in case you're wondering, was a 9 seed. That was Syracuse back in 2006. That would mean having to win on 5 straight days.
Yeah, that'd be really hard. And this has been a Jekyll and Hyde team all year, capable of beating those top teams in the league.
Deli Coker working awfully hard in the glass. Got his own miss back, pushing bodies around. Edwards got a block, though. Here's Dyson in the front court. Walker for 3. And Mason clears.
St. John's is a team that's not going to score a lot of points in terms of post-up moves. Guys like Coker, they only get 19% of their points off free throws, Dave, so they're not going to operate as well inside when they pound it in.
Double dribble is Malik Stiff. Turns it over.
The double Malik backcourt, that's been another Achilles heel this year. They've combined for about a turnover every 4 possessions. And Malik Booth actually has played very solid down the stretch of the season.
Yeah, Booth was big in the triple overtime win against DePaul. In that third overtime, Booth had 6 points. Played 51 minutes in that game, at 6 assists. As you see, UConn shooting it better after a 1-8 start. A lot of those have been, though, in transition, with Dyson getting the basket. There's an unforced error there, as Robinson can't even make the simple entry pass to Gavin Edwards. That's got to drive you crazy if you're Jim Calhoun, huh?
Absolutely. They run their set play, they screen inside, and they don't put the ball right where it needs to go. And you mentioned earlier Dwight Hardy, who's really instant offense for St. John's, will not play in this tournament.
Mason, no. Oriaki trying to shield Evans. Gets the rebound. Connecticut has lost 5 consecutive Big East tournament games. The record is 8. That was Connecticut, but that was back really before they were a powerhouse from 1980 to 87, as it was last touched by St. John's. Connecticut also has won 9 straight Big East tournament games, which is a record. They got both records, losing streak and winning streak. That was from 98 to 2000. Including the 99 championship game when they beat St. John's, and lost to to St. John's rather in the 2000 championship game, ending that 9-game tournament win streak.
Well, that was one of Mike Jarvis's better teams, with Eric Barkley and Anthony Glover, Reggie Jesse, Bootsy Thornton.
Dyson caught in the air, had to shoot it. Oriaki got the rebound, but he's called for over the back. No basket. His first, 5th UConn foul in the half. Calhoun pleading his case with Carl Hess, but to no avail. And it seems like St. John's has dominated for the most part here in the first half, but only a 6-point lead.
Yeah, they've dominated in terms of, if you watch the game, you'd think so, but remember, they have trouble scoring. They look the part of a quality team. They play hard. They do everything they need to do, but you got to put the ball in the basket if you're the Red Storm.
Offensive foul on Justin Burrell. Beautiful day in New York City. Here at the Garden, St. John's on top of Connecticut by 6. Post office just across the street from Madison Square Garden. St. John's on top of 6. First ever delivery of a victory by South Florida in Big East tournament play, beating DePaul 58-49 earlier today to advance to play Georgetown tomorrow. Dominic Jones had 20 points, 9 rebounds in that game. 2 more games tonight, Seton Hall Providence and Cincinnati Rutgers, both on ESPNU.
Now, Seton Hall with really a resume that does not have a bad win on it, but still work to do in this tournament. They'll take on a Notre Dame team that Joe Lunardi has into the field. And one thing about the Big East this year, and you can really, if you look at it, of course, UConn being the 12th seed is emblematic of this. There is so much balance in this league, but a lot of opportunities for quality team wins for teams on the bubble.
Majuk fouled inside. Back to your point on Seton Hall. You're right. Really no bad losses and 4 overtime defeats. 3 in the league. If they had just won one of those, they'd be at 10-8. Joe Lunardi right now has them among the first 4 out in his latest bracketology as Kennedy goes to the bench.
Well, and flip it around. Marquette with 9 games in the league this year decided by 3 points or less, and they won 6 of those 9 games. So we talk about being on one side or the other of these very close games that have been part of Big East play this year. It really is important how many of those you won.
Majuk misses the front end. Connecticut 2 of 5 at the free throw line. Already 19 fouls on St. John's. Majuk tried to get the block on Brownlee, and somehow Brownlee got the basket. And then Dyson could not handle the pass on the other end. A UConn turnover.
Well, good set play coming out of the break. They created an isolation on the wing. And you see Brownlee blows right by Majuk. Good timeout execution. Here's an example, a young man, a junior college transfer, the only guy in that roster with a southern accent. In fact, the only guy that says yes, sir, or no, sir, kind of takes the coaching staff back a little bit.
He gives the Red Storm an 8-point lead. 7 minutes remaining here in the first half.
He is from Tifton, Georgia. Long way from Jamaica, Queens.
St. John's at 16-14, their best record in the Norm Roberts era. This is his 6th year, was in 07. They won 7 league games and 16 wins overall. Shot clock down to 5. Harris Horn on the drive. Over Majuk, can't bank it in. Long rebound, Dyson.
Yeah, this is really where they missed Dwight Hardy, who's out for the tournament with a knee injury.
Walker way off of the pull-up.
Hardy and Kennedy, Dave, they're responsible for about 40% of St. John's offense throughout the course of the season in terms of shots and plays made.
Evans will take it in on Edwards. Another tough shot. St. John's has hit 4 or 5 wild shots off the glass.
But that's also an example of how St. John's later in the year has gone to that spread offense, and you saw Evans, who's a big load inside, take Edwards off the dribble.
I guess they know the English here at Madison Square Garden. This is their home floor. Good play by Edwards, but Robinson just couldn't make it. Out of there with it, Malik Booth at 5 feet 9 inches. Got a little too fancy with it and almost lost it.
You're generous.
To the corner, Brownlee. 3 won't go, but Horn on the backside with a rebound.
Well, in terms of effort today, it's been in St. John's first 15 minutes. If they could make some shots, they would be able to extend this lead. But you see how they've kind of spread the floor and taken Majuk and Edwards away from the basket as much as possible. And that stifles UConn's shot blocking ability when they do that.
Another jumper from Brownlee. And the lead is 13 for St. John's. Their largest lead. Calhoun timeout. Seven straight points by St. John's, and the Huskies in trouble.
This is what we talked about. Justin Brownlee at 6'7". He's more of a small forward type. But because of the way they've spread the floor, you see a little pick and pop action. Edwards doesn't even come out and contest a shot. And Brownlee knocks it down. He's a junior college transfer from Chipola on the Florida Panhandle, and that causes Jim Calhoun to want to discuss that open shot.
Well, and I'm sure Jim Calhoun is second-guessing whether he should have gone with his starters. Remember, he benched them and Gavin Edwards, their 6th man, for the final 16 minutes. He did come back with Majuk and Walker, the 2 youngest of those 5 guys that played the most minutes in that regular season finale against South Florida. He ended up going back with Dyson, Robinson, and company to start this game, and they're down by 13.
Well, what has made Jim Calhoun a great winner through the years and a Hall of Famer is he is a horrible loser. And he was very frustrated during that South Florida game. But ultimately, You know he wants a win and put the best team on the floor, but they have not responded to the motivational tactic.
You talked about in the first game teams that pass the eye test, and there are times this year as Walker scores that Connecticut certainly does, beating Texas, winning at Villanova, beating West Virginia. Some think the Mountaineers could end up being another 1 seed, but then UConn has other games where they look like an NIT team.
And part of that is their depth. They got 3 high-level players in Dyson, Walker, Robinson. There's a lot.
Great catch, but Horn unable to finish. Evans gets to the loose ball. Majuk with good defense. It then comes up with a foul. His first and the 6th by UConn.
Yeah, Sean Evans knows that Majuk, although he's got length to be a shot blocker, just go right at him and attack. And that's actually Sean Evans' game. He is not a finesse player by any stretch of the imagination. But he'll get you 2, 3, 4 offensive rebounds a game.
Averaging 6 points and close to 6 rebounds. Doesn't look bad shooting the free throw, even though he's a 48% foul shooter on the year. As Oriaki and Coombs McDaniel come in, we've seen Jim Calhoun bring players in and out. Darius Smith, who has not played a whole lot this year, was in early, as was Beverly, who's now on the bench.
And that's why I would be concerned about next year, because they've got 2 guys, as I mentioned. One guy is committed, Roscoe Smith out of Baltimore, a Rudy Gay type, and then Jeremy Lamb is a solid guard, not a top 25 guard. They are going to have some work to do in recruiting in the next couple months.
4 minutes remaining. UConn with the ball down 13.
Dyson and Walker have not shot a free throw yet. They average 13 a game.
And Dyson, fortunate he didn't get called for a charge, and then Walker way off of the shot. Shot clock is not reset. Ball never hit the rim. Walker finally recognizes. Missed the 3, though. Had a shot clock violation earlier in the half.
That was a solid possession. St. John's has done a reasonably good job of keeping Dyson and Walker out of the game. Along with those 13 free throws, Dave, they draw about 10 fouls a game.
If UConn isn't scoring in transition today, they're not scoring. Burrell, physical play, but could not finish on Stanley Robinson.
St. John's did a nice job of getting 5 red jerseys to the paint. Sometimes when you play a team like UConn, you got to give up a little offensive rebounding and not send as many to the glass to protect that transition.
Robinson inside, no. It's not like they're getting shots or not getting shots around the rim. They've only attempted 4 threes, missed all of them, but they're not making the mid-range jumpers or the shots with the basket.
Well, I thought early in the game they could go inside, and really their best post offense is Walker and Dyson, because they don't have anybody you can throw it to in the post that can get you a basket.
Booth on the drive, nice. Hung in the air, found Evans and throws it down.
Good vision by Booth. He hung in the air. He kind of got caught, but a nice job by Evans to fill the baseline.
How about Booth? 5 assists, no turnovers. St. John's by 15 off the foot of Walker. No, they say that Sean Evans touched it last. UConn needs a win, several wins to even get back into the NCAA tournament conversation. Right now, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. St. John's by 15 late in the first.
Ryan Burns studio coming up on the Cisco halftime report. I'll be joined by Jay Williams and Doug Gottlieb. USF, a Big East bubble team, needing to start the tournament run with a win over DePaul. We'll tell you if they got it. Seton Hall's on the bubble. What would it take for the Pirates to get into the big dance? And the UConn women play for a Big East title tonight and look to take the win streak to 72 games. All that and much more on the Cisco halftime report. Guys?
Back here at the Garden, we've got 2 former St. John's head coaches in attendance. One sitting next to me, Frank Fraschilla, and there you saw Luke Carnesecca. And how about that? Right out of the timeout, UConn with a miserable possession. Evans on the other end gets the finger roll, and St. John's has opened up a 17-point lead.
Well, they have turned around and used the MO that UConn uses in terms of getting some easy baskets in transition. And you're right, Malik Booth has been really solid, very cerebral decision maker today.
It's a 13-2 run. Connecticut, for the season, it's low and a half, 20 points. That's happened twice. They're at 18 right now. There was contact, no foul call. Shot clock at 7. And finally, UConn hits a 3 as Walker drains it.
It's kind of funny. Malik Booth almost dared Walker to shoot. He backed off him.
Walker has been shooting it well from 3. 43% his last 7 games. Under a minute to go here in the first half. Here's Burrell, can't answer, long rebound to Horn.
They have outstrapped UConn, St. John's has, for much of this first half.
And Burrell called for the illegal screen, knocking Walker to the deck. And just got a technical foul.
And he picked up, that means it's 2 fouls because he's going to get a personal. It's the second chicken wing today. Anthony Mason committed one earlier. And that is not a smart play by Justin Burrell.
So 3 fouls on him. And he's still talking. And I'm not happy with Sean Evans, his teammate, trying to hold him back. And Brian O'Connell, Norm Roberts.
Well, you got the lead. You got a 14-point lead. You commit a moving screen. You got to be able to put the play behind you and not put your team in harm's way here.
Fran, isn't that though where Norm Roberts, or one of the assistants, gets to Burrell and says stop it, because he was still jawing with Brian O'Connell? You know what?
It was too, in my opinion, it was too late. You know, unless you run out there on the court and grab him back, he's 50 feet away from you and the coaching staff.
I guess my point was when he came over, it was the players that were trying to instead of the coaches. Now they've got assistants talking with him.
You see, he wants to have a debate with Brian O'Connell. And Earl, look, see, he needs to calm down right now. That is not a winning play.
UConn back within 13, and it'll be Husky basketball.
I think Norm Roberts smartly puts him down there by Father Marr, the team chaplain. I don't think he's going to say confession, but he could at least calm him down. You got the lead. You got everything going your way.
So 3 personals on Burrell, who played well here in the first half. Went healthy, missed 5 games with an ankle sprain. He's been a big contributor. About a 2-second difference between the game and shot clocks.
UConn right now, you don't want St. John's to have another opportunity to score. See, I would crowd the lane right now, especially with Smith's man. I would play off and make sure Walker can't get into the paint.
Walker spinning in the lane. Can't get it to drop. Majuk missed the putback. Walker got to let it fly. He does. And that'll do it for 1 half of play. Now, the last time we saw Jim Calhoun in Connecticut here at Madison Square Garden in the Big East tournament, they put up 117 points. Granted, that took 6 overtimes. And in the first half, they turned it over today almost as many times as they put it in the basket. And they put up just 22 points and trail by 13 to St. John's at halftime. Time now for the Cisco halftime report. We send you back to the studio. Ryan Bird, Doug Gottlieb, and Jay Williams.
Thanks so much, Dave. 13-point St. John lead over UConn at the half. Welcome into the Cisco halftime report. Ryan Bird, Jay Williams, and Doug Gottlieb. And UConn has been a mystery for months, continue to be a mystery, down 13 at the half. What did you see from the Huskies in the first half?
Well, we said it before the game even started. It all depended on how UConn decided to come out and play in the first couple of minutes. They did not have a sense of urgency. Malik Booth, the point guard for St. John's, was able to get in those gaps, create for teammates. It looked like they just didn't even want to be there. Like they were ready to go home, Doug.
If there's no urgency now, Doug, what does that tell you about UConn?
Well, I don't know if they've quit, but it appears so after the first half. We'll see what type of energy they come out of the locker room with. But guys, at some point, we have to look at this team and say, maybe they're just not that good.
That's simple.
I mean,
That's simple.
you lose enough games, and we keep going back to, well, the Texas game. Well, they almost beat Kentucky. A lot of people almost beat Kentucky. They didn't, and that's why they keep score, because at the end of the game, we say this team's better than the other team. They keep losing games.
It's hard when your leader is Kemba Walker, somebody so young. They need a veteran to step up and take over that
Just
responsibility.
22 points in the first half. They trailed by 13 to St. John's, opening round of the Big East tournament. When we return on the Cisco halftime report, was it a bull market in New York City today for South Florida? The South Florida Bulls looking to pad their resume. Next.
ESPN's exclusive presentation of college basketball is brought to you by Subway Restaurants. Now, any regular footlong is just $5. Any, so hurry in.
Welcome to the Pressure Dome, big city of lights. So nice, they said it twice. The only way to win is sweat and sacrifice. See everything moves at a fast pace. Make a fast break to be in last place. Stand in mind. Everything you need for success you can find. New York City, New York City.
Welcome back to Championship Week, presented by Dick's Sporting Goods. The 2010 Big East Championship, presented by New York Life. Second of 4 games today here at Madison Square Garden, and St. John's on top of Connecticut by 13. Huskies needing wins in a big way to get back in the NCAA bubble conversation. Dave Pash back with Fran Fraschilla. A year ago, St. John's, Fran, in its Big East tournament game against Marquette, had a whopping total of 10 first half points. 35 here in the first half. Much better performance. Very balanced offensively.
Very balanced. They got 9 juniors, so they've been through a lot of Big East wars together, and they've outplayed Connecticut in terms of their effort and intensity, and that has to drive Jim Calhoun absolutely batty.
UConn shooting just 31% from the field. The bench points for St. John's, and that's without Dwight Hardy. We look at our first half stats brought to you by New York Life. Hardy missing today's game with a bone bruise in his left knee, yet St. John's still leading by 13. And Jerome Dyson will not start the second half. Jim Calhoun threatened to bench him along with 2 other seniors for this game after Dyson, Edwards, and Robinson sat the final 16 minutes of their last regular season game against South Florida.
Well, the key to this game for UConn is going to be the first 3 or 4 minutes. I'd love to see what kind of intensity they come out with.
Walker, no. And Edwards the rebound. Oriaki's not starting either. He's a freshman, but he started the game. So they go with a Kwandu and Gavin Edwards, normally the 6th man. He was one of those guys benched against South Florida, but he's getting the start. He led the team in scoring in the first half today with 8. He missed that one. Offensive rebound, though, by Robinson. And now Walker looking for the 3. Got it.
Well, there aren't many guys in this league that have really caught fire at the end of the season behind the arc like Kemba Walker has.
And Connecticut comes up with a steal, but then Sean Evans has it for St. John's. Back down the court and gets the basket.
It's been one of those days for St. John's. They've made their own breaks with effort and intensity. There's a good example right there. Boy, if I'm Malik Booth right now, I'd kind of turn the heat up on Donnell Beverly, because Kemba Walker is playing off the ball.
UConn would have a lot of turnovers in that first half as Robinson misses almost as many turnovers, 8, as field goals, 9. Maybe that's the reason why they get both Walker and Beverly out there together, as St. John's cannot score in transition. Good hands by Evans, though, but he touched it last.
Anxious to see if the Huskies, if Jim Calhoun's halftime talk inspired this team. Let's see how hard they play.
Jim Calhoun was out near the elbow to get Akwandu off the floor. He was so unhappy with him, and pulls him for Majuk after Akwandu started the second half.
Been a mirror image of the season, because Jim Calhoun has constantly looked for the right combination all year.
Majuk, no. Beverly inside got the rebound. UConn hustling a lot more on the glass, as a timeout is called before the turnover. Good job by Beverly. But UConn still down 12 early in the second half. St. John's trying to end a 9-game losing streak to Connecticut. Up by 12 early second half. The Red Storm played 8 games during the regular season at Madison Square Garden, so they know the backboards and rims well.
Sure do. Take a look at that spin move. Here's another one off the glass. But it's really been, in large part, these plays happen because St. John's has played with really good energy and effort for the first 22 minutes.
And DJ Kennedy, the leading scorer for St. John's at 15 points per game. Has just 5 points, yet St. John's up by 12 because they're getting contributions from just about everybody else.
He was saddled with 2 fouls in the first half, only played 6 minutes. St. John's has a number of guys now with 2 or 3.
Walker finds Robinson for a throwdown and a St. John's foul.
Excellent pick and roll. We talked about Stanley Robinson's ability to climb that elevator shaft. Watch how long he hangs in the air. First of all, it's a great delivery off the pick and roll. Look how Kemba Walker stretches Kennedy, Robinson's man. And then Stanley Robinson hanging in space and throwing it down.
Third foul on Anthony Mason. Robinson only a 65% free throw shooter. And this is the three-point opportunity.
Well, Mason picked up those 2 quick fouls early. He and Burrell with 3 fouls each.
Hit the first shot of the game. Doesn't have a point since Mason, and has those 3 fouls. His dad played with the Knicks for a handful of years. Now in his 5th year himself here in New York at St. John's. Opportunity for Connecticut on the other end to get it down to single figures, and Walker fouled by Evans. That's his 3rd. Second on St. John's here in the half. St. John's has led in the second half in 7 of their 12 losses this year in league play. And also led Cornell with 13 minutes to go by 6 and lost that game.
Well, this is a team, as I mentioned earlier, with 9 juniors. Most of them have been homegrown and have suffered through some of those growing pains with Norm Roberts. These are the games, as you mature, you must learn how to close out. The difficulty for St. John's is going to be containing Kemba Walker. Because, as I mentioned earlier, Dave, he's playing the best basketball of his season.
43% from 3 over the last 7 games. Got a couple in this one. This is the second free throw, though. How much do you buy into the momentum shift with the technical foul on Burrell late in the first half?
No, I don't think that was a factor. It only cost St. John's the 1 point, and they went to halftime. This is a whole new half. I think the momentum shift, if it happens for UConn, it's because Jim Calhoun made sure that some paint came off the locker room walls.
Oriaki is out there now. He did not start. Dyson is yet to play in the second half. Backed in 3 by Paris Horn. We showed you that package earlier, but
and that was a horrible shot. Stanley Robinson defending it. But credit Paris Horn. He shot a 22-footer about 24 feet.
Edwards able to collect. Robinson on the backside sticks it in.
Well, when Sticks, no pun intended, is playing his best, it's the effort and energy of making those plays in garbage time in terms of offensive rebounding, lobs, running the floor.
4 offensive rebounds now for Stanley Robinson. Averages 8 boards per game and a career high 15 points per game. Kennedy trying to go baseline. It's cut off by Oriaki, and Kennedy stepped out.
UConn's intensity, Dave, has sped up St. John's on the offensive end. St. John's needs to be a little bit more judicious with the basketball in this lead.
Edwards down low, puts it in from Robinson. UConn with an 8. And it's all happening with Jerome Dyson, their leading scorer, on the bench, not playing at all here in the second half. Booth to Kennedy, and UConn gets back defensively.
For St. John's right now, you don't want to put the running game in your back pocket because it really helped them stretch the lead out, but you got to make sure you make good decisions.
Brownlee with 8 to shoot over Oriaki. No. Rebound Robinson.
How about no Jerome Dyson so far?
And UConn able to get with an 8. Beverly to Walker. And had it blocked from behind by Kennedy. And then Edwards throws it into the backcourt. Booth with a great play. Terrific play by Malik Booth instead of a turnover and the clock being stopped and the side out. He gets to the loose ball, takes it in for his first basket.
Let's see if that's a momentum breaker, because UConn really started to put some heat on St. John's. That could be a huge basket.
Looked like Beverly may have slowed up a little bit, just assuming it had been a backcourt violation, and did not expect Booth to take it away. UConn gets it back, though, after St. John's had possession. Robinson, pretty move around the rim.
St. John's is playing too fast right now. They're playing like a team down 8 instead of a team up 8. Jim Calhoun wants that full court pressure turned up.
Brownlee, alley-oop! Paris Horn with the stuff. Back to a 10-point St. John's lead. Booth knocked it out of bounds. It'll stay Connecticut basketball. Entertaining start to the second half. Brownlee to Paris Horn, and like the stock market today, St. John's going up. 10-point lead on Connecticut. And a lot of those baskets around the rim. Back at the Garden, where St. John's has a 10-point lead on Connecticut. Just under 14 minutes to go here in the second half. Big East Championship game, first round game. And we've got more championship week continuing Thursday on ESPN2 at 12:30 with Kansas taking on either Colorado or Texas Tech in the Big 12. Phillips 66 Big 12 Championship quarterfinal. ACC tournament first round action. Georgia Tech and North Carolina. Tar Heels blown out in their final regular season game at Duke. A lot of people thought maybe North Carolina was good enough to make a run in the Big East tournament, or in the ACC tournament, kind of like
they never
UConn
did.
in the Big East tournament.
Yep, they never did. Poor guard play, some injuries, no Ed Davis.
But can they do it in the ACC tournament, or they're just not good enough? As the foul is called on Horn, his first.
Did you ever think you'd say the number 10 seeded North Carolina Tar Heels in the ACC tournament?
Kind of like Connecticut being a 12 seed. The only other time they were that low was in 07 as a 12 seed, as Dyson has struggled 4 points, and seeing his first action of the second half, did not start the second half. Edwards had it stripped by Booth. He has played a terrific game for St. John's. Pull up in transition. His second basket of the game. Back to a 12-point lead. Jim Calhoun calls another timeout.
Perfect. Malik Booth, who's played so well the last 4 or 5 games. He takes the ball away from Gavin Edwards. You see Jim Calhoun having a little talk with his senior from Gilbert, Arizona. And then a great decision on the break. We've talked about the way he's played down the stretch. One of the better on-ball defenders. Watch him come out of your picture. And this is what I like. Doesn't really try to force the issue. Just a pull-up jumper from the elbow.
Winner of this game will play Marquette tomorrow at 2 Eastern on ESPN. Georgetown and USF will be the first game, with the Bulls winning their first Big East championship game. Knocking off DePaul earlier today. 2 more games tonight on ESPNU. Providence, Seton Hall, Cincinnati, Rutgers.
Little piece of trivia for you. Last time UCLA, North Carolina, and UConn did not make it to the NCAA tournament, 1966.
Wow. And remember last year, Connecticut and North Carolina were both 1 seeds. For a while, it looked like Louisville, a 1 seed last year, would miss the tournament as well. They'll most think they're in now, as Evans with the steal can't score on the other end, cleared by Majuk. Here's Dyson now in transition. Both of his baskets have come, and fast break opportunities, but couldn't score there. Loose ball and jump ball, and on the possession arrow, it will go to St. John's.
It's interesting. Jerome Dyson, Kemba Walker, they get to the line so much. At that time, Sean Evans jumped out of the way as Dyson was looking for a body to jump into.
We've seen UConn make a run to get it within 8. What is it going to take for them to make a sustained run? Is it going to happen on the defensive end?
No, I think it's going to happen on the offensive end. St. John's really, I mean, they've been pretty solid offensively, but it's Dyson and Walker. I think have to get this game going up and down a little bit.
Good play by Evans to get St. John's another opportunity on this end of the floor. There's Kennedy. Drives past Robinson, and ball batted out of bounds by UConn. Coombs McDaniel will come back in for the Huskies, replacing Gavin Edwards.
That means Stanley Robinson will go to the 4 spot, something that hasn't happened a whole lot this year. Jim Calhoun has played him almost exclusively at small forward.
Here's an alley-oop. Unable to finish is Brownlee. Dyson out in transition, got a 4-on-2, tried to take it himself and lost it. Now St. John's with a 4-on-1. All the way, Kennedy missed the dunk.
You got Robinson ahead, too late.
Finds Majuk, and he can't score in transition, but he's fouled.
Wow, keep up with this now. It ends up with Kemba Walker not being able to see, but Dyson had a number of opportunities. Couldn't finish. Kennedy doesn't finish, and then Walker had Stanley Robinson out in front, but just didn't eye him until it was a little too late.
Warren picked up the foul for St. John's, his second 4th team foul. UConn yet to commit a team foul.
See that little segment right there? I actually like that for UConn because I think Dyson and Walker do their most damage in transition.
Meanwhile, Majuk misses the first free throw. Connecticut just 4 of 11 at the free throw line. Majuk, a freshman from Sydney, Australia. He was born in the Sudan, fled to Egypt, and spent 8 years in Cairo in a detention camp, and moved to the States, living in Virginia. They thought they'd get a little bit more out of him this year. Yeah, there was just 2 points, 3 rebounds.
Yeah, there was a lot of buildup for Ater Majuk, almost like the beat and some of the other great players that Jim Calhoun's had.
Or no, but out to Brownlee.
St. John's needs to not treat this ball like it's a hand grenade. There you go. You've got a lead. It's not like you can't run in transition, but you don't want to get yourself playing too crazy. They go to that 5-man spread now, and it's helped them in the first half.
We talked earlier, obviously for Connecticut, the Huskies need this one, but a lot of other teams in the Big East need UConn to win to help their resumes. As Majuk misses, shot clock at 3. Evans got to let go of it. It's a shot clock violation, no basket. But if UConn loses, perhaps fall out of the top 50 RPI, that might hurt some other teams in the Big East, and some other bubbles might burst. UConn certainly is if they don't come back. Back here in New York City, St. John's trying to hand Connecticut its 6th straight Big East tournament loss, and they've got a 12-point lead on the Huskies midway through the second half.
Well, we talked about having a good balance of running your half-court offense, but they have created some fast break opportunities off their defense today, Dave. You see the steal. Here's another one by little Malik Booth. And then his 3rd steal of this package, and you see in transition the cerebral decision to pull up and shoot that jumper. And on the flip side, the Huskies do not have a fast break basket in the last 16.5 minutes, and that is a recipe for disaster.
Jerome Dyson had a couple of those baskets early when Connecticut had some fast break points in the first half, but Dyson has not scored since, and here he lost it. Another turnover. Almost got it back, though.
Boy, Dyson has been on another planet today. Turnovers, not being able to finish. Not the way he wants to go out.
Now, a lot of people think if he'd have been healthy as an offensive foul is called on Booth. If Dyson would have played in the NCAA tournament last year, Connecticut might have won it all, but Dyson missed the final 12 games of the knee injury last year. UConn still made it to the Final Four. But the last 3 games, shooting around 30%. And struggling again in this game. Just 2 of 6 from the field. Had 4 points in the loss to South Florida. Didn't play, though, the last 16 minutes. He was benched by Jim Calhoun and benched to start the second half. And finds himself back on the pine here with 10:42 left.
Tells you all you need to know about UConn's season, that with 10 minutes to go, Darius Smith and Donnell Beverly are out on the floor. Look at this.
Booth again with defense and offense. And it's a 14-point lead for St. John's.
I talked to a couple Big East coaches this week about St. John's, and they said Malik Booth is a very, very underrated on-ball defender, and we've seen that today. He has been a picture of harassment for the Huskies.
Meanwhile, Connecticut with 7 turnovers this half. They needed that. Beverly with a 3. It's only his 3rd three-pointer all year. Good defense. Beverly hurt his knee, though. Walker fouled by Lawrence, but Beverly is down.
Well, Jim Calhoun has gone to the 2-2-1 press. Not a good sign.
Jim Calhoun will come over and take a look at the junior Donnell Beverly from Hawthorne, California, continuing to hold that right knee. Calhoun may have no other choice but to put Dyson in the game now.
It'll be interesting. He can go down the bench. He is going to go to Dyson. He doesn't have a lot of other choices. Jamal Trice. You see the knees banged right there.
Good save by Horn, but it ended up in the hands of a Connecticut player, and Lawrence picked up the foul. The 16th foul on St. John's. Connecticut has not committed a team foul this half. And hopefully Beverly's okay. Hit a 3 to get UConn within 11. Still plenty of time left. 9:56 to go in the second half. And St. John's, as we mentioned earlier, has blown a lot of second half leads, especially in Big East games. But Booth, what a day he's had, huh?
Excellent ball pressure, turns it into the offense. St. John's has done a really good job taking advantage of some miscues by Connecticut and turning him into easy baskets, because this is a St. John's team that does not score easily in terms of the half-court offense.
That was the 4th steal by Booth, his 6th point. He also has 7 assists. So Dyson back out there, along with Walker and Darius Smith in the backcourt, and Edwards and Robinson in the front court. Walker getting into the lane.
Oh my goodness!
Beautiful move, and UConn's got it back down the 9.
Boy, he attacked, was picking his spots. He had to use the other side of the rim.
Then picked up a foul in the backcourt, his 2nd personal, 1st team foul in the half.
Watch him exploit the defense right here. He's going to jab, now to crossover. Where does he attack from? Front of the rim? Nope. Goes backside and uses the rim to protect that shot.
Walker, sophomore from the Bronx, played at Rice High School, McDonald's All-American, All Big East 3rd team. Jerome Dyson also named All Big East 3rd team.
Hey, Walker was an understudy to Edgar Sosa as a sophomore.
Burrell, baseline! St. John's missed a couple of dunks earlier in the half, but Burrell made sure that one went down.
We saw Burrell in the first half hit some jumpers, and there you see the athleticism.
Edwards falling away in and out. The tip, though, goes by Smith.
You mentioned Darius Smith has not gotten a lot of opportunities this year, but he's got a chance now. Both he and Beverly, who's out, create some havoc.
Boy, that was close to being a 10-second backcourt violation. As Brownlee misses another St. John's jam, and he'll go to the line. That's at least the 3rd missed dunk this half by the Red Storm. Edwards picks up his 3rd foul.
Now take a look at this by Burrell. Nobody comes over. That's been an Achilles heel all year for Gavin Edwards, guarding away from the basket, but no defensive rotation by UConn. St. John's has done a really good job of attacking the rim today. In large part because UConn does not close down the lane very well.
Malik Booth replaces Malik Stiff. One more free throw coming up for Brownlee. Lead is 10 for St. John's. Connecticut with a 17-14 record, 7-11 in the Big East. Needs probably at least a couple wins to get back in the NCAA tournament bubble conversation.
Yeah, but this is not the way to start it if you're trying to impress the basketball committee. Nope.
Smith got his own miss. Latest bracketology by Joe Lunardi as UConn is the 12th team out. Edwards, no. And then a foul. If that's Burrell, that's 4.
And Gavin Edwards got the message because he was a beast on the backboards on that play. Looked like he was 1-on-3 in there. He hung with it. Guy that averaged 3.8 points a game as a junior and one of the more improved players in the Big East this year.
They got Brownlee for the personal, his third, 17 foul on St. John's. And it was Ashton Gibbs that won most improved player in the Big East, but certainly he could have made a case for Gavin Edwards. First Joseph, who ended up winning Sixth Man of the Year, was one of the most improved players. Yeah, Notre Dame got Jimmy play Butler last year. Ambramitis, he redshirted.
Jimmy Butler, I thought, really improved for Buzz Williams' team.
Marquette will play the winner of this game tomorrow at 2 Eastern on ESPN, following Georgetown and South Florida. Don't forget 2 games tonight on ESPNU. Edwards 1 out of 2. It's a 9-point deficit for UConn.
Yeah, UConn is pressing off a missed free throw. You don't see that very often, but gives you a sense of their desperation now.
And timeout called by Norm Roberts. Nine-point lead for St. John's, just under 8 to play. 2 more games tonight, as mentioned, on ESPNU, starting at 7 Eastern with Seton Hall Providence, Cincinnati Rutgers at 9 Eastern. The top 4 finishers in the Big East, Syracuse, West Virginia, Villanova, and Pittsburgh, will not play until Thursday. Are the games tonight? What are your thoughts there?
Well, Seton Hall, obviously, it's a situation where they got to, like we said earlier with South Florida, you got to par that hole. You're not going to get a lot of credit from the basketball committee, but you can't advance to play Notre Dame unless you beat Providence and Cincinnati and Rutgers. Cincinnati, one of the more disappointing teams, I think, Dave, in the Big East. A lot of hope for them, but like UConn, they lost a lot of close games, didn't go their way. And Rutgers, after starting out 0-8, finished up relatively strong. Only team in Big East history to win 5 of their last 8 after starting out 0-8.
A lot of St. John's fans here at Madison Square Garden. This is where they play 8 games during the season. Very proud program, 7th all-time in college basketball history in wins, as Kennedy with a beautiful play, getting to the basket and spinning it in off glass.
Well, another example of using the other side of the rim. You put the shot blocker in jail. Good agility.
Walker fouled before the shot, and he'll go to the line because that's the 18th foul, so a 1-and-1 coming up. St. John's leading by 11, able to get to the rim on the UConn defense. Burrell around Edwards for the throwdown, and St. John's has an 11-point lead on Connecticut, trying to advance to round 2 of the Big East Championship here at the Garden.
ESPN's exclusive presentation of college basketball is presented by New York Life, helping keep your family safe and secure. And in part by Dick's Sporting Goods. Every season starts at Dick's. And by VW. With 13 different models, it's a whole new Volkswagen and a whole new game.
Back in New York City, St. John's plays a lot of its games here at Madison Square Garden, playing well against Connecticut today, leading 53-42. Still a lot of time left, though, for the Huskies. They certainly have the firepower to come back as we look at secure their spot, brought to you by New York Life. Connecticut on the bubble. I don't even know if they're on the bubble, trying to get back on the bubble. Seton Hall is, though, no question. What about Notre Dame? Are they a bubble team, or do you think they're in right now? Joe Lunardi has them in.
I think they're in because I think the basketball committee will look at the fact that they played basically 6 games without Luke Harangody. They got really hot at the end. We got a chance. I saw them a number of times where they played terrific basketball. Actually played better without Luke from the standpoint of the whole offense not going through him. So if he's back healthy, he will be a huge help because Hansborough, Jackson, Abramitis all picked up the slack while he was out. Not to mention Nash and Carlton Scott as well.
Scott's been outstanding for Notre Dame. Oh, another missed free throw by Connecticut. They've missed 10 foul shots. They trail by 11. Only the 13th foul. They get Dyson for a second personal. Connecticut down to St. John's by 11. The second of 4 games in first-round action of the Big East Championship presented by New York Life with Fran Fraschilla. I'm Dave Pasch. Connecticut, believe it or not, has not won a Big East tournament game since 2005, and it doesn't look good right now. Jerome Dyson has really struggled. Their leading scorer on the year, but the last 4 games, all losses. He has not been very good as Sean Evans puts it in to get the lead back to 13 for St. John's.
Yeah, he took that ball right through Ater Majuk's face. Evans, a big burly guy.
12 points for Evans, almost doubling his scoring average during the regular season. Walker, and offensive foul on Kemba Walker. That's his 3rd personal.
That's the dilemma for UConn right now with Jerome Dyson being saddled to that bench. Kemba Walker's got to be careful not to try to do too much, but yet the only chance they have is if Walker catches fire. What a disappointing run if this is the end for Jerome Dyson. Has not played his best basketball, Dave.
And another UConn foul. If that's Walker, that's number 4. It is. Well, as if on cue, you said you can't take gambles if you're Walker, and he does. Picks up his 4th, 15 foul on UConn. Jim Callan going to leave him out there, though, with 7:11 left and a 13-point deficit.
Well, he's got no other choice. St. John's, on the other hand, now, you got to show some maturity. They know about the meltdowns early in the year with those leads in the second half. There's a good decision by Evans. I think you got to pick your spots if you're St. John's right now. When to run, when to hold it up.
St. John's 6-12, and in 7 of those 12 losses, they've had a lead in the second half. Shot clock down to 5. Brownlee over Edwards, and offensive rebound by DJ Kennedy.
And a good, smart decision there by Kennedy. I thought Horn was going to go to the rim 1-on-3, but he pulled it out.
And then a foul from behind on Darius Smith. 2 on him. 5 on UConn. There's been a lot of talk about Norm Roberts, who's in his 6th year, only had 1 season where they finished with a winning record. That was 07 when they were 16-15. But it seems like the last few years he's been on the bubble, so to speak, at least in the eyes of the New York media. If he beats UConn today, do you think that ends?
Not necessarily,
speculation,
but it helps. Norm Roberts has done. He's a class guy. I've known him a long time. You know, certainly a couple wins here in the tournament would give these guys hope. Remember, this is a team with 9 juniors, so you know, if you're a Norm Roberts fan, you'd love to see him finish the job just like that, like Brownlee.
Back to a 15-point lead.
He's built the program the right way with quality kids. They don't get in trouble off the court. Been at the mercy of a really tough league the last few years.
Walker, no. Rebound, Evans.
Pick your spots. Good decision.
You see DJ Kennedy on the other side telling Malik Booth, hey, pull it out.
Yep.
We got the lead. 5.5 to go. 15-point advantage. Well, Roberts has come under criticism for not keeping some of the better New York kids like Kemba Walker, but Lance Stevenson as well as at Cincinnati as Evans scores. But he's doing well today with the guys he's got.
Well, and it didn't start with Norm. St. John's stopped recruiting New York City Catholic League players. And teams like Pittsburgh, Louisville, all were the beneficiary of that. And by the time Norm came back and took over the program, they had to clean up some NCAA issues.
Yep.
Reestablish the character of the program. But today, you know, we said at the beginning that St. John's, you never worry about effort with the Red Storm. They bring the effort most nights, but today, the offensive execution, they've gotten some easy baskets in transition, off some breakdowns by UConn as well. And Norm Roberts, a native of Queens, the big Bill Self disciple. Bill Self hired Norm Roberts at Oral Roberts and didn't even know him, Dave. Hired him on a recommendation of a friend. He was with Bill Self at ORU, at Tulsa, at Illinois, at Kansas. Came back home 6 years ago. And I know there are a lot of people rooting for Norm Roberts because he has done this job the right way. But obviously it's about wins and losses.
Trying to get their 17th win. That would be the most in his tenure. They've lost 9 in a row. since beating Connecticut. 9 in a row against the Huskies since beating them in 2002. Their last NCAA tournament was that year. They also went in 2000 when they won the Big East Championship, beating the Huskies in the finals. Good defense by Brownlee. It'll stay Connecticut ball.
And Stanley Robinson could have used Western Union because he telegraphed that pass for about 3 seconds, but St. John's been very solid defensively today.
Dyson got caught in the air. Another turnover by Dyson. And Kennedy lost it on the other end.
You know, look at Dyson.
Yeah, with the foot of Evans. They rule it, but it wasn't a kick ball. And then Horn with a great hustle calls timeout. It's all St. John's. Out hustling Connecticut, leading by 17.
Dyson turned that ball over. Give him credit. He hustled end to end to get that ball back, but then he turned it over a second time.
We were talking about Norm Roberts and his future. What about Jim Calhoun, who's finishing his 24th season in the final year of his contract? Reportedly has agreed to terms on a deal but has not signed it. And talking with some UConn officials, there was an opinion made by a local sportscaster that he had heard from sources that Calhoun was done after this year, but UConn officials have denied that. Jeff Calhoun, Jim's son, was reported as saying he thinks his dad will coach a few more years.
Well, he's 67 years old. He's coached 38 years as a head coach. He's done everything in basketball, 2 national titles. I would never presume to tell him what to do, but you know, he's already had an unbelievable career. He willed Connecticut into national prominence with his intensity. The greatest thing about Jim Calhoun is that he is a bad loser. And it's what's made him successful, but I would personally not be surprised if he just decides to spend some time down in South Carolina at his vacation home and enjoy the grandkids. But what do I know? He'll probably be back coaching.
Dyson comes up with the steal, and then Brownlee gets it right back for St. John's.
That is another turnover for Jerome Dyson, Dave. I have never seen him play as poorly as he's had today.
Boy, 8 turnovers for Jerome Dyson. A lot of people thought he had first-team All-Big East potential coming into his senior year. Did make the 3rd team and averaged a career high, close to 18 points per game, but during the 3-game skid to end the season, under 10 points per game, and way under 10 today. Just 2 baskets for Dyson in this one. Marquette awaits the winner of this game as Walker misses on the inside. Numbers again for St. John's. Here's Booth. He's got a trailer, instead takes it himself. And St. John's has blown out the Huskies.
St. John's has absolutely dominated in transition today, and primarily because of their defense and UConn's inept offensive execution.
Won't be a 6 overtime game today for the Huskies. Remember that great game with Syracuse last year. UConn losing in 6 overtimes. One of the great games in college basketball history. They're hoping to follow that loss up with a great run here in 2010, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. Which means NIT at best for UConn as Evans scores, and he'll go to the line for a 3-point opportunity.
And a great deep offensive game plan by Norm Roberts. The ability to spread the floor, take you off the dribble. Happy days again at Madison Square Garden for the Red Storm.
The 3 standout seniors for Connecticut perhaps done for the day. Dyson, Robinson, and Edwards on the bench as Connecticut trails by 19 to St. John's. We got more championship week action continuing Thursday on ESPN2 at 12:30 Eastern as Colorado or Texas Tech take on #1 Kansas in the Phillips 66 Big 12 Championship quarterfinal. ACC tournament first round action at night, 7 Eastern, Georgia Tech and North Carolina.
Hey, Colorado has come on at the end of the year in the Big 12. There is no gimme in that league. Of course, Kansas now back to #1, Dave. They're my preseason pick. I'll stick with Bill Self's club. It's a team that I think can win it all or will win it all.
And you've seen Syracuse in person last game against Louisville on the road at Freedom Hall. That was their first road loss of the year.
Well, I've seen Syracuse a couple times, but I love Syracuse. Jim Boeheim told his team after that Louisville game, he said, guys, we won the league. We won the league. Let's enjoy it. We won the league. So despite the loss today, we won the league.
And they'll play Thursday at noon on ESPN, as they are one of 4 teams that get the double bye, something Jim Boeheim was quoted as saying is awful. He didn't like the double bye setup. In fact, the coaches, as Evans goes to the line after a Connecticut foul, the coaches had submitted a proposal to the Big East to change the format for the Big East tournament. No, actually, everybody would end up playing potentially 4 games, and the top 4 seeds would actually play on Tuesday, then have a day off, and then play on Thursday.
That's workable.
And the Big East decided not to do it, but they might revisit different scenarios, as they currently have the 4 teams getting 2 byes, but could revisit it in the offseason.
I would love the double bye if I was a coach in the Big East. You know why? It means my team had a great regular season. It means I probably have a pretty good basketball team.
Do you think the coaches that are in favor of the top 4 teams playing on Tuesday and then getting a break just don't like having that much time off in between games?
I think that's part of it, but if you look back to last season, the first year that everybody was in the field, there were 8 teams with byes, 4 of them with double byes, and those teams went 6-2. So on the whole, I happen to like it. It just means to me that I had a really good team in the regular season, and I would take my chances once I got to Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, the proposal that the coaches had was for the top 4 teams to play the bottom 4 on the first day, and the middle 8 teams to play on Wednesday. And then the winners of the Tuesday games to play the winner of the Wednesday's games on Thursday.
Oh, that's workable. That guy won a few games. 25-year anniversary of the great Big East run to Lexington to Kentucky. 4 teams, and 3 of them came from the Big East: St. John's, Villanova, and of course Georgetown.
Villanova beating Georgetown in the title game that year. Lou Carnesecca led St. John's to 2 Big East tournament championships, 83 and 86.
You know what I find amazing? That St. John's, I don't know if this has been done. I know when I coached there it hadn't been done, but only team at that point to ever have 2 different players win back-to-back Wooden Awards. Chris Mullin in '85 and Walter Berry in 1986.
If you're just tuning in, I mean, this is a shocker. The fact that UConn is down 23 and they might get their lowest point total in a Big East championship game. Now with 46 as Coombs McDaniel gets his first basket.
Yeah, you got all young players out there right now for UConn. So Jim Calhoun, if he's going to be back coaching, he's got a team on the floor that will return. A couple freshmen. Actually 4 freshmen, I think. You got Smith out there, Trice, Moriaki, and Majuk.
St. John's trying to take some time off the clock. To the corner for a 3. It goes. St. John's, after Horn's 3, shooting close to 60% this half. South Florida shot better than 50% for the game against Connecticut in the Huskies. Last outing, that was the only team to shoot better than 50% against them all year. The defense certainly slipping for Connecticut, and obviously the offense, based on the fact they only got 48 points today. Last touch there by Smith. It'll go to St. John's.
Well, we talked about St. John's' ability to make a lot of things happen today because of their effort and energy. You see all the friendly bounces off the Madison Square Garden backboard, but then a few without the backboard as well. A couple throwdowns, a lot of easy baskets off steals. But maybe the most underrated guy today for St. John's is little Malik Booth. What'd you list him as?
Well, he's listed at 5'9". I didn't list him at that.
I know. I think he's probably 5'7", but it doesn't matter. He played like he was 6'7" today. Excellent decision-making and great pressure defense.
St. John's will move on to play Marquette tomorrow. The Golden Eagles, the 5 seed. That'll be an interesting matchup. Their meeting during the regular season came down to the wire. Jimmy Butler had a game-winning shot. He also had a game-winning shot to beat Connecticut in the closing seconds.
That's right. Buzz Williams' team 3-1 in overtime games this year.
Brownlee with the dagger. A 3 that makes that lead swell to 25 over Connecticut.
Yep, that's a great feeling if you're part of that St. John's basketball family right now. Long time coming.
Majuk before the shot fouled. That's the 10th team foul on St. John's, so he'll shoot 2. But what a day for the Red Storm. Terrific balance. And remember, no Dwight Hardy. They're one of their leading scorers and their best bench player not playing because of a bone bruise in his left knee. Don't know whether he'll be available tomorrow for the game against Marquette. But other guys stepped up for St. John's.
Well, they have depth. I thought they established themselves in the first 3 or 4 minutes of the game. They got out to that 6-8 point lead early. UConn was never able to respond, and then the effort and energy, particularly on the defensive end, and created a lot of easy scoring chances.
60% shooting in the second half by St. John's as Coombs McDaniel gets the bounce. And for guys like Robinson, Dyson, and Edwards who've been on the bench for the last 4 or 5 minutes for Connecticut, guys that were a big part, particularly Robinson and Dyson, in the Final Four run for the Huskies last year. Going to finish this year with a 17-15 record.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how the seniors respond in the NIT, assuming UConn accepts an invitation.
The fans here want John Tobanek to take the shot number 4 in red. Instead, he's going to hold on to it as St. John's blows out Connecticut thanks to 60% shooting in the second half, 50% for the game. Connecticut goes all year without allowing a team to shoot 50% or better from the floor. South Florida does it in the final regular season game, and then UConn gives up a 50% effort for St. John's tonight. And the Red Storm win going away by 22. They led throughout. They'll play Marquette tomorrow at 2 Eastern. First, it'll be Georgetown and South Florida at noon Eastern. Still 2 more games tonight in the Big East Championship presented by New York Life. Seton Hall, Providence at 7 Eastern on ESPNU, followed by Cincinnati and Rutgers. Coming up next on ESPN2, it's college basketball scoreboard. For Fran Fraschilla, I'm Dave Pash. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. Now back to the studio as we say so long from the Garden for now. Here's Ryan Bird, Doug Gottlieb, and Jay Williams.
Thanks so much, Dave. So a 22-point win for St. John's. The opening session of the Big East tournament is in the book. St. John's and South Florida getting victories. Welcome into our scoreboard show. Ryan Burr along with Jay Williams and Doug Gottlieb. And guys, there's 2 ways you could take that game. You could look at St. John's and give them a ton of credit. 60% shooting in the second half, move into the second round. Congratulations to them. Or you could take the UConn perspective, a team that did not look like they wanted to be on the court. Let's go positive, because that's how we play here. St. John's, how impressed were you?
I'm going to take the high road first. I was very impressed with St. John's. Malik Booth in particular did a great job putting defensive pressure on the ball, delivering the ball in little gaps for easy assists. And this is a team that fight. They beat Louisville. They beat Cincinnati at home. They took Marquette into overtime. And the one thing they are consistent with, even though they don't have a lot of wins, they fight each and every possession, just have more heart today.
Yeah, they also beat Notre Dame on the road. Last team to beat Notre Dame before Notre Dame went on the stretch. I thought they were really well prepared. And I thought the big key was that because UConn wasn't ready to play, they got confidence in the first half, and then they just exuded that confidence in the second half. A big win for the Red Storm and Norm Roberts. St. John's, a 22-point win over UConn. They will get Marquette in the second round. Let's go back to the Garden now. Fran Fraschilla standing by with the winning coach.
Thanks, Ryan. Norm, you jumped on Connecticut early. How'd that happen?
Our kids played with unbelievable passion, and we had a great 3 overtime win against DePaul, and our guys just kept that going.
A lot of close games in this league this year. Some didn't go your way. What were your thoughts when you had the lead at halftime? What did you tell your team?
I told them that we outplayed them for 20 minutes. Now we got to do it for the next 20 and just stay focused and be fundamentally sound and play with your heart, and they did that today.
You probably know you play Marquette tomorrow. I have to remind you of that because you're worried about this game, but what do you have to do to keep this going, the good play today?
Well, the big thing with Marquette is that they play with their heart. They play with unbelievable energy. We have to match that. Now, last year, when we played, we were young, we didn't know, and then we got beat pretty bad. So we'll be much more focused this time.
How important is balance to your team?
It's big. It's big for our team, and we got something from everybody today. DJ didn't have a great day, but he made some big plays at the end, Horn, and we got something from everybody.
Congratulations. Good luck tomorrow.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
Back to Ryan.
All right, Fran, thanks so much. So once again, South Florida and, of course, St. John's winning the day session, day one of the Big East tournament. Let's show the folks how we got here. UConn and St. John's, game 2, Madison Square Garden. Coach Calhoun, when he got off the bus, wonder if he knew what his team was in store for. Paris Horn finishing the Red Storm go up 10 very early on and came out of the gates fast.
Well, it was something for me. Just look at the body language of everybody on UConn. There's no sense of urgency. This looks very lethargic.
Second half, UConn tried to make a run, but St. John's would answer those runs. Justin Burrell.
And that's where the preparation comes in that they were prepared for the press. Gavin Edwards opening a swinging gate and Justin Burrell doing a chin-up.
And Brownlee, Justin Brownlee, he tried to dunk everything today, and he had his fair share of jams, didn't he? A big win for St. John's. They will get Marquette in round 2 of the Big East tournament. St. John's, one of those teams that would have to go wire to wire to make the NCAA tournament, but still, this could be a real building block for that school and their basketball program. As far as UConn goes, 17-15. They finished the season now, 2 games over 500. They lose their last 4 games, guys, and this is a team that for weeks now there have been arguments of why they should be in the NCAA tournament, why they could get back on the bubble. Jerome Dyson, the senior leader, the last 4 games, all losses. The numbers don't lie. 1 for 11 from behind the arc, under 8 points a game, and turning the ball over way too much.
Shut it down. Shut it down. I mean, he missed the NCAA tournament last year. You would think, because of injury, you would think that this would be the time which Jerome Dyson was playing as hard as Kemba Walker played in the second half, but that wasn't the case. I mean, was it just me, or
no?
We were sitting there in the green room saying the exact same thing.
When you say shut it down, explain what you mean.
It's the NBA thing that they do. If they're not winning after All-Star break, some guys just shut it down. Literally shut it down.
It was like pouting on the court. I don't know. He just didn't want to be there. I mean, turned the ball over 8 times. It didn't look like he cared. It's his last college game, maybe. I mean, I wouldn't accept an NIT game if I'm Jim Calhoun. I have far too much pride. #1 seed last year. If Dyson doesn't get hurt, they might be the #1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament, and that's how you go out. I don't know. That just doesn't sit well with me. And it acted like there was a million places he would really like to be. Madison Square Garden wasn't one of them.
Let's really take this season in parts here for UConn. Lost early on to Duke and Kentucky, but we're in both of those games. A little bit later in the Big East year, their head coach Jim Calhoun takes a medical leave. Team then went on a little run and then started losing a game. He came back, went on a little run again, and then they lose their final 4 games. If you could put your finger on it, what was wrong ultimately with this Husky basketball team?
Well, I think the leadership didn't come from the veteran. I thought the leadership came from Kemba Walker. And also, usually when you have a leader, Kemba Walker, is his first time being the leader of that team, scoring the basketball at will, making key plays. But your leader has to be able to really talk down the line and get people to believe in him. And Kemba Walker is a great leader, but nobody else believed in him. Jerome Dyson didn't fight with him. Gavin Edwards at times seemed like he didn't even want to be on the court. This is a team that just it had no heart at the end of the day. Kemba Walker was the only kid with heart on this basketball team, and nobody else even wanted to be on the court.
Now, in defense of some of the other players, Kemba Walker was a turnover machine at times this year.
Yes.
And so you can tell us everything you want as a leader. And I agree with you. This team clearly lacked leadership. You don't lose 12 of your last 18 games with some level of talent, a Hall of Fame coach, unless you lack leadership. But there's also a void of the ability to shoot the basketball. Right. They have no bench. Frankly, I think they had some bad misjudgments of talent in recruiting.
Shooting, Doug, from the start of the year, the one thing that never changed with UConn was their ability to make outside shots.
Well, this is also, in addition to shooting, they don't pass well. So you don't pass well, you don't shoot well.
That's a tough combination to win
at
games.
times, they didn't play hard. And they have no bench. Where do you want me to begin? Because I got a bunch of issues.
No, listen. Even though you can't pass, even though you can't shoot, the one thing you can control is your intensity that you bring to the table every single night. Even though Kemba Walker was a turnover machine, he cared. You saw his emotions on his face when he did turn the ball over. Right. You saw when they lost how angry he got. Jerome Dyson, they were losing this entire game. He went and sat on the bench, and this is all you saw.
But last thing I'll ask you, and we'll move on. We're hoping to hear from Coach Calhoun from his post-game interview, but won a national championship at Duke, 2-time player of the year. If you're on a team and you see this happening, Jay, what do you do?
I call people out. I call people out on something that I think Kemba Walker he couldn't do this year because this was his first year as the leader of this team. But I think next year, you go down the line. You have a team huddle, you have a team meeting after practice, and you call people out. You challenge people. That's what leaders do. You challenge people. And listen, the coach can only lead so much. Jim Calhoun has tried so many things with this team. He's benched Jerome Dyson. He's benched other players. I'm sure he's had talks in the locker room. But it comes down to the players on the court that have to be the leaders at the end of the day.
If you don't think it's hard to win in college basketball consistently, UConn and North Carolina, the two best teams in the country. North Carolina's the 10 seed in the ACC. They too may be at home. They too lack leadership. They too have had an epic disaster of a season, considering how it started and the fact that they have North Carolina on the front of their chest. But guys, I think this is a big moment for UConn's program. Despite the fact Dyson was really disappointing energy-wise at the end of the season, they lose Dyson, they lose Gavin Edwards, they lose Stanley Robinson, and right now Roscoe Smith's a big-time recruit, but he's only an oral commitment. If you watch that on TV, is that a program you want to play for? I don't know.
You know, Doug, and on a positive note, you got to take your hats off to Norm Roberts right there in a situation that a lot of people are talking about him being out at St. John's to win a ball game like that.
I think Doug touched on an interesting point, though. Two #1 seeds from last year, UConn and North Carolina, both missing the tournament. A year in which we've discussed parity so much. Two of the ultimate big boys aren't even part of that parity.
We haven't even gotten into. Indiana's not in discussion. UCLA is not in discussion. Arizona might miss the tournament for the first time in a quarter century. I mean, this parity really does this to us, but also it makes your margin for error ever a bit more slight. And if you're missing something like leadership, like shooting, like passing, it gets exposed because other teams, they're not waiting for it.
The UConn men, unfortunately, if you're a UConn fan, heading in another direction. Their season ends today in the Big East tournament, 17-15 on the year. Coach Jim Calhoun addressing the media at Madison Square Garden.
Well, first thing, most importantly, give congratulations to St. John's. They come out here with purpose, physicality, and quite frankly, handed us our butts. They knocked us off all screens. They completely outplayed us. We're much hungrier than we were. We turned the ball over 20 times. We've been shooting 80% for the past 5 games from the foul line. Today was 6 for 18. And quite frankly, just got handled by a St. John's team who played very hungry and played, once again, as I said, with purpose. I was not at the game in New York, but George said, in Connecticut, but certainly they've improved greatly. And with all juniors except for Mason, who was a good player but wasn't a great factor in the game, they certainly have a bright future ahead of them next year. And with 8 juniors, those are juniors become seniors, they'll be one of the better teams, I think, in the Big East, certainly in the top 5 or 6 next year. And the team I saw today from St. John's was terrific. The teams I saw from Connecticut today was not very good at all.
Questions, please. Dave?
Jim, how do you explain Jerome's play in the last 3 games or so?
He hasn't played well. No, he's played very poorly. If I could explain it, I'd try to do something about it, but he's played very poorly.
Right here in front.
Coach, I noticed, especially the second half, you were sitting down for a lot of it, pretty calm. Do you feel like after a while, it's kind of like you couldn't really do anything to some of the players come back and get back?
No, I try to be different kind of coach at different games with this team, and this team has been here. Last time we were here, we got beat on a wall layup with 40-something seconds to go against Kentucky, and I thought the season certainly would not turn out the way it ended today. So without question, no, I never felt helpless. I just, some of it was an admiration, I guess, maybe of St. John's, and some of it was maybe just disappointment with the way we performed and we were handled physically so easy. I mean, they hit set screens and they were wide open. They're not known as a three-point shooting team. They go 7 for 13 today. And my theory on that always is that when you can do anything you want, your confidence increases and you make shots. And I've seen a lot of teams do that. And we've had teams that have done that themselves. But clearly it was not the kind of performance that we would like to have had. I don't know if I were yelling and screaming or sitting. They had 8 dunks that we had in the lane. I'm just not sure how many of those I would have blocked if I'd been jumping and yelling.
Do we have any questions for the players? Right here, Mike.
Yeah, can you put a finger on why, at different points this season, the team seemed to show such progress? It was followed by a setback
don't really think that there's any way that we can explain it, because if we could have explained it, then we would have fixed it and we wouldn't have had so many ups and downs this season. So, I mean, we're just sporadic, and we don't really play the way that we should all the time, and then that really shows.
Okay, right here.
Coach, I have a question for you. Your son was quoted earlier today saying that he expects, in response to the story on SNY, that he expects you to coach the next several years. What are your thoughts?
I'm really disappointed how we played today. I've had no thoughts about anything except hopefully getting to the game against Marquette tomorrow. And then I always, at the end of every season, I feel healthy. I thank God. I feel like I'm, not today, I didn't, I guess, but I feel like I'm capable of coaching. And so it never entered my mind. I was made aware of the story. It had nothing to do with anything and was not based upon any substance of fact. Matter of fact, the two comments that I talked to two people, one of them I haven't talked to in a year, the other one I haven't talked to about that situation or about my future in maybe 8 months. So between the two of them, that's about average, or about 10 months, I have not talked to either one of those people about my own personal situation. Like everything else, I'm in the business of trying to recruit players to UConn. I love the school, and I still love coaching, but I'll make, right now, it was completely erroneous. It couldn't be farther. When I heard a couple of the facts about me talking to certain people who I haven't had not a word with. Maybe it's unfortunate too, I haven't, but I haven't had a word with. One for 1 year, the other one for 8 months about the situation. And yet, yes, there is a contract offer out there. I haven't seen the final copy, but it's out there, yes.
All right, Jim Calhoun, obviously, after a tough loss, 22-point loss in the opening round Tuesday in the Big East tournament for the UConn men. He talked about effort. He talked about St. John's just beating them up and down the court. Ultimately, he addressed the contract and him returning to UConn. A lot to digest there from Coach Calhoun. Your thoughts?
Well, Doug, I ask you this. You and I are both very, very competitive people, right? I guarantee you, Ryan, if we were on that basketball court and we were getting dunked on by St. John's, I would foul the heck out of somebody. I would make an angry play. And the thing that I did like about that press conference, Kemba Walker had this look of a killer on his face. You can see that he was going to take that negative energy and really try to bring it into the next year. They have a lot of work to do as far as their mentality about becoming a better basketball team, and I think it's going to require some time. But another thing, Jerome Dyson, he's supposed to be the leader of that team. Why was he not at the podium?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's his decision as to whether he comes to the podium or doesn't. But no, he didn't even show up at the game, essentially. He was there. He was there, but he wasn't there. I mean, just he wasn't mentally there. And when you have a senior, a guy who returns, a guy who it was a very well regarded return for him, because people like ourselves were sitting here saying if they had Jerome Dyson last year, they might have won a national championship. That's how well regarded Jerome Dyson's been. But I think what happens here from UConn is going to be interesting. You talked about, Jay, how we're both competitors. I think Jim Calhoun's a competitor, but is he competitive enough to rebuild this thing yet again in a process that'll probably take at least another 2 years? Until then, he's competitive at the very top of the Big East, considering what he's losing and where they are in recruiting. You can't just fix it overnight. I mean, maybe you could if you can get another John Wall type, but as of right now, they don't have a John Wall type coming in. So it's a really good question. Where do we go from here with UConn?
All I was saying before, there have been many games that we lost in college where I told my coach, I'm going to go out and speak. That's what a leader does. You see leaders man up to that responsibility and say, listen, I did not come out, I did not perform to my best tonight. That's what a leader is supposed to do.
Well, let's show you what went down at Madison Square Garden today, UConn and St. John's. Coach Calhoun coming off the bus, and you wonder if he had an idea just what kind of effort his team would put out today from the very get-go. St. John's was the more aggressive team, was the better team, and the Red Storm going up by 13 at the half, dominating the first half.
Well, Malik Booth did a great job attacking his zone. This is St. John's team. Listen, they play with a lot of intensity every single night, and they beat Louisville and Cincinnati at home.
You talked about Kemba Walker, and as Gavin Edwards gives up baseline and Justin Burrell does his best chin up on the rim at Madison Square Garden, and they cut it to 8, and it really started with a technical foul at the end of the first half where St. John's gave UConn life, but St. John's would not go away. I mean, we have to at some level be impressed with St. John's ability to put UConn away in the second half.
And St. John's will move on to the Wednesday game in the Big East tournament. They will get Marquette. And certainly not what we were looking forward there. But,
and of course, Marquette, they took Marquette to overtime when they met just about a week and a half ago, also in Madison Square Garden. So you think that can be a very, very competitive game.
Okay, and so it will be St. John's and Marquette on ESPN tomorrow afternoon. The Johnnies have lost 9 straight to Marquette, but as the boys have indicated, there have been some very good games along the way. When we come back, one of the things we'll discuss, UConn with Coach Calhoun out. How will that affect recruiting? We're back after this timeout.